this is Mahima. Thanks for tuning in. I'm delighted to introduce to you today to an expert in the field of journalism and film criticism. Tanul Thakur has an impressive background and experience providing insightful analysis and critique of films. With this unique journey, we are eager to learn from his insights and hear his story. Welcome, Tanul, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your time and this chat, which just sounds very promising.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in this field?
Yeah, I mean, so like many Indian men, I was once upon a time an engineer. And I was interested in writing for a very long time, since I was a school kid and all of that. But I went to the US to finish my undergrad in electrical engineering. Then I graduated in December 2010. Then I worked for 2 years for a firm in Colorado as an engineer and all of that. And I tell this to a lot of people that like those 2 years were quite nice and all of that. I really enjoyed my job. It wasn't as if I did not like engineering, but for some, in those 2 years I was underworked and overpaid, and I don't know why I had a problem with that. So then I wanted to shift to a career in which I am overworked and underpaid. Jokes aside. I really wanted to become a writer. I didn't know you can become a writer, in the sense that, I come from a pretty straight-laced upper middle class family. My father is a doctor, stuff like that. My mom used to be a teacher, so it's a pretty, you do your engineering, then you do your, you work for a few years, you do an MBA. So basically, like, I was set up for a corporate career, but I just thought that I wanted to do something that I was really passionate about. Essentially, I wanted, it was a quest or a pursuit for a more meaningful or a more pure life. And that's when I thought that, I should return to India to give it a shot. In fact, like I still remember that day is clear as a day. And I think what's really important is that what people should also understand is that unlike, say, engineering, or unlike, say, a management job, or, XYZ, there are no sort of like job portals where you can, like, go and, apply for jobs and stuff like that. In journalism, I mean, sure, there are people here and there, but it's still a very, very opaque sort of a thing. And I was very scared that, like, as an engineer in the US, how I would, like, transition to a career as a writer in India. I had almost no contacts. But I remember on the day I'd registered myself for like the GMAT exam, given $50 to the ETS and stuff like that. I thought that, what am I doing? I have no interest in this. It's just something that people want me to do. And I remember, and I told myself that, like, it was this weird thing. Like, there are just two people talking inside my head, and I'm sitting in my cubicle. And I was like, but I have no contacts in India. I have no nothing and all of that. And I told myself that, like, look, man, give yourself a month, look for jobs. You haven't done anything, it's, you can't just sit on your, twiddle your thumbs and be like, acha, something will happen and all of that, or nothing is happening, I'm unlucky, XYZ and all of that. It's a very filmy moment. You have to understand that Tamasha was 2.5 years away, right? Like, there were stories, of course, people quitting their job to pursue their passion and all that. But I just told myself that, like, look, man, give yourself a month, at least, like, make a resume. So I had been writing, contributing a few pieces here and there, some blog here, some blog there. Like, I had my own thing as well. And I'm like, at least make a resume, at least, like, do something. And and I had like this bizarre sort of a brainwave, and then I went to, like, the office pantry to get some coffee and all that. I come back and I tell myself that you have not even literally liked the Facebook pages of some new interesting magazines in India and all of that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that right now. So there was this magazine called The Big Indian Picture back then. It used to do very good, like, long form narrative film journalism. And I was like, I love this magazine. I love the kind of work these guys do. I should, like, just like their pages to see what's happening, right? Like, I should keep updated and all of that. And the moment I like the page, what do I see is that looking for an intern, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Wow. It just sounds filmy, but it's exactly what had happened. So I did 2 pieces for them, and then I asked for a full-time job. In fact, it just so happened that they were looking for a full-time job. Okay, so I asked for a full-time job and all of that, and they agreed. They liked my 2 pieces and all of that. So I moved to India, and that's how my career began. I mean, a lot of people do say that in journalism, what you also need is a bit of a luck. And it just sounds like such an awful thing for like somebody who believes in, say, meritocracy or believes in like talent and all of that, right? And I would always flinch when I would hear like a senior journalist say that. In fact, David Remnick, the editor of the New Yorker, literally said that in an interview, and I'm like, no, man, tell me something, like, give me something concrete. But it's so weird. Like 10 years later, I'm saying the same thing. I mean, of course, you need to have talent, you need to have drive, you need to have passion, and all of that. But you also need to create your luck. I mean, people say that the harder we work, the luckier we get. So, I mean, yeah, that's my story. I mean, that's how it began.
Yeah, you've got a very impressive story, like the background. You were in US and doing engineering, like stuff like that, and then decided to give it up, come to India. And yeah, luck played a very important part as well. So yeah, it's a mix of both for everyone, I think. Luck, destiny, whatever you call it, right?
Absolutely.
But you also have to have that thing that, yeah, I want to do it. So you quit engineering and came here. Very interesting. And the world of cinema is full of captivating stories. And as a film critic, you have had the opportunity to engage in various cinematic experiences, right? Can you share some of the most exhilarating moments you've had while doing this, and how has these experiences inspired and motivated your work?
Yeah, so I mean, it's so there are 2 aspects of my job, right? So one is watching films and reviewing them, which I've absolutely enjoyed them, and there have been a lot of instances of just moments of exhilaration, moments of like pure joy. I can give you an example. I'm not being too dark about it. So I came back to India, and I was pursuing my whatever passion and all of that, almost living a dream. Not a great salary, of course. You cannot compare an engineer's salary to like a journalist's salary in India, but I mean, I knew that I'd made a choice, right? So I mean, that was not a problem. But without going into like much details of it, I just became very depressed. Like really depressed, and I didn't even know back then that I was depressed and all of that, whatever. And but then I think the only thing that sort of like kept me going was that I mean, one of the things that and I wouldn't belabor the depression to not like bore your cheery viewers and like optimistic young professionals, but like one of the things that like happens in depression is also that, like, for me at least, that I stopped feeling anything. That like things would just like everything's a blur, right? Like everything is like overcast day in day out and all done. So but then I thought the only thing that would give me joy, the only thing that would make me feel, the only thing that would one of the few things, not the only thing, was watching cinema, like engaging, engaging with a medium that is just so beautiful, that is so diverse. It gives you like a gamut of stories, a gamut of emotions, a gamut of human experiences. And in a bizarre way, again, without sounding very filmy, although I can't help it, is that those experiences started to sort of like almost, it motivated me to go see a therapist. Like I did that for like 2 years, and I'm in a much better space now and all of that. So that was just so beautiful that something so inanimate, something on screen and all of that, can actually talk to you so deeply, so meaningfully, in a way that is just so intimate. So that was one. The second part is actually not a depressing answer at all. The second part is, which I have a lot of interest in, is long form journalism. So, and I didn't want to say particularly cover the stars, because stars have been covered, like people do that. I mean, nothing wrong with that, of course, straightforward entertainment journalism, and I did that for a bit. But I was like, I wasn't very interested in it. I was more interested in exploring the human condition in cinema, but through people who are on the fringes of the system. So, say somebody like a junior artist, or say somebody like say an assistant director, or say like, so I remember like the first piece that I did, like the 5,000 word piece, was about like the impersonator of Amitabh Bachchan. He lives in this, like, you guys would have definitely watched his performances. Fairly famous, this guy called Feroz Khan and all of that. And then through him, like, say, I started to understand, like, say, the challenges of identity. I then did this another piece about like this, for Caravan, this woman, Kirti, who is comes from a very modest background and all of that. She lives in Bhiwandi, and she would travel to Dharavi, which is like 2 hours. She would like change one train, change another train, take a bus, take another train, and then come to Dharavi to learn acting. That was just so motivating, man. That was amazing. And I remember sitting with her in a class, in an acting class in Dharavi. And you have to understand that, like, acting schools are very expensive in Bombay. Whether you take like Whistling Woods, whether you take Anupam Kher's this thing, or Barry John's, anything. It's a acting cinema. It's a game of the rich, largely, right? But that school in Dharavi used to charge something like 100 rupees per month or something like that. And Kirti would make all of that journey and all of that. She had been been a junior artist for some roles and all of that. She wanted to break it into the industry. And I looked at her and I was just absolutely gobsmacked. It was so inspirational, yeah, like to see somebody. I mean, like, I remember interviewing her in April, and it's very muggy and very whatever. And I followed her journey for 2 to 3 months to write like a long piece. And I was like, what all people do for dreams? I mean, it's sure. I mean, I also did something in my whatever relative or much more privileged capacity. But like, there are just so many battles. Like, Indians fight day in day out, hiding in plain sight. That no movies get made of them. They don't grace the headlines of newspapers or magazines or whatever. Yet they are there. I mean, we talk about inspirational things almost like in the ambit of, like, say, a biopic. There was this one person who did that, and there was a Wikipedia page of it and all of that. But there are many ordinary, like, poetry hides in ordinariness is something that I very, very believe in. So yeah, I think these were some of the things that were just very moving to me and very inspirational, actually. So, I mean, a lot of my journalism, a lot of my on-ground reporting, I have derived a lot of strength from that, So yeah, I remember all of that. Not just a lot of fondness, but whenever I am down, struggling with something, I sometimes think of Kirti, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, you like, it's so amazing the things that you learn, and like, she's struggling so much, and you found that perspective, and you're doing your journalism too. Like, wow, amazing. Uh, so so my next question, when it comes to compensation, what can one expect when starting out in this profession? I know you said that it's like not as much as an engineer, but still. And for those who excel, what opportunities for career progression and earning potential lies ahead?
Absolutely. So the first may have a slightly depressing answer. The second, absolutely not. I think it's so. First, I mean, it's something that, like, I'm sure a lot of people know. At least I knew about it when I was starting out, and all of that is that the at least the starting compensation isn't as great when it's when compared to, of course, an MBA job, or of course when compared to an engineering job. Even in India, like, forget, like, say, the US or whatever. So obviously, but also, I mean, in India as well. I know enough examples of, like, say, IT companies like TCS, Cognizant, whatever. They come into colleges, and at least back in the day, that is true. My engineering life has been dead for the last 10 years, so my data definitely could be out of date. But there have been examples of, like, I would know engineers who are also not earning a lot, and like, at least like the starting salaries in some sort of companies and all of that. So it's a bit of a complicated answer, but like at a broad level, starting salaries as compared to other sectors may not be that great. Like, say, I mean, I can tell you my salary, my starting salary was 22,000. It was tough. Like, live in Bombay and all of that, it's not easy. Maybe they have increased. Maybe, of course, it also depends on, like, if you join like a bigger brand or a bigger whatever, maybe you'll get slightly better and stuff like that. So there are all sorts of, like, challenges and changes there. But you have to also understand that, like, that's if you really want to do this, that's a choice that you've made. Of course, I mean, it can get tough because, I mean, there's inflation, there are all sorts of challenges, but But you have to also realize, right? Like, again, as an example, 25,000 in a salary, 25,000, uh, but with a lot of joy, a lot of satisfaction, a lot of passion. I mean, for the last 10 years, I don't even know what Monday mornings are. I absolutely don't understand what Monday blues are, because I absolutely love doing what I do, right? Like, there is no this thing. I mean, and so you have to understand, right? Like, whether it's, for example, of course, whether it's 25,000, but a lot of joy, a lot of passion, a lot of intellectual curiosity, a lot of fire, a lot of like creativity, a lot of will to create your own destiny. Because if you love doing what you do, right, you are your own boss. And if you are your own boss, then I think then magic happens. Not just like in terms of you being like famous, or whatever it is, like excelling in whatever those broad conceptions of excellence are, say, in our society, but like also, I mean, in a more nuanced way, in a more direct financial way, you can actually earn a lot. Like, if you, I mean, you can be a freelancer, and of course, freelancing also does come with its own challenges and all of that. There are ways in which, you can like earn money through what you do, because if you're good at what you do, you are irreplaceable, even in the times of AI. And if even if you start slow, I mean, you can make people later in your career literally pay for the services that you provide them, because there is nobody like you. So that's one. Second, what are the opportunities? It's immense. It's beautiful. I love it, because it's like you as a kid on the shore of a vast ocean. It's up to you. So I can give you like many examples, right? Like, say, I'm a film, like I started off as like a film critic, or like, and but when I came to India, I only wanted to be a film critic, right? And I was like, I'll do this my entire life and all of that. But in my first job, as I explained to you, right, like I would go like report on like the subcultures of Bollywood and all of that. And I was like, and this is the kind of tradition that's been pioneered, like it has a century old history, if not more, pioneered by people at the New Yorker and other, like, there was new journalism era in the 1960s, where and this genre is essentially narrative nonfiction, where you write nonfiction, but you use all the flair, devices, and finesse of fiction. So you're reading about like real people and all of that, but it's all true, it's all happened, right? And I was like, this is amazing, because I always wanted to be a novelist. And I read like a really crap novel, which I'm very happy never went anywhere. And I was like, oh, and I love talking to people. And I love like getting into the heads of like people and all of that, and all of that. And I was like, okay, so I can combine these two, like, and so that's what, right? Like, so say if you're interested in long form non-fiction or reported stories and all of that, of course you can pitch to any publication in India, but not just India. I mean, why restrict yourself to India? You can pitch abroad, like work on your skills and all of that, make contact, not that tough. And there's New York Times Magazine, there is Atlantic, there's New Yorker. Of course, it's very tough to get into these places, but I mean, what is easy anyway, right? So that became like one avenue of like whatever. So for the last 7 years, I got so besotted with narrative nonfiction that I was like, okay, I want to write a book. And like for the last 7 years, I've done that. So I mean, then there opens up another avenues, right? Like you can write books. That's another thing. You can do magazine reporting, long form reporting. If you are interested in more straightforward cultural analysis, for example, you can be a columnist somewhere. You can, like, say, have a retainer or whatever as a film critic somewhere. You can pitch in, I mean, pieces that are blend of like political, cultural, and like sociological sort of commentary. One great thing about India is that, you will never run out of story ideas. This is a country where story ideas are being generated every half an hour, if not every minute. So then all sorts of avenues open up for you. I mean, you think you have a great enough story, write it, collaborate with a filmmaker, turn it into like a Netflix short, a Netflix movie, like a documentary, whatever. I mean, there's an explosion of VR. I want to now explore how can my stories be adapted into like small VR pieces. There are like it's just up to you. I mean, you can open a YouTube channel, you can start a podcast, I can go on and on and on and on, right? Like, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of doing something that you love. You're not following a syllabus. You're not sitting there waiting for your boss to come and be like, oh, why have you not done this? What about this update, that update? You're working for yourself. And when you are working for yourself, as I said earlier, magic happens. You will create things you did not even know you had the talent, time, or the power to. So, I mean, these are just very few examples. I'm sure, like, if your listeners are interested, they will find their own way. And I'm sure I will find my own way as well, like in the coming years. It's just so huge.
It's like, wow, if you follow your passion in the starting, yeah, maybe you earn lesser, but then, yeah, magic happens, right? So when you gain enough experience, you'll have all those perspectives, like, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. So amazing. Thank you. And we love to, hear from you that how to break into this industry. Like, how can I start a successful career in journalism and film criticism? What should be the starting point for someone aspiring to be a journalist? And is there, like, you had an internship opportunity, right, when you started? So
Yeah.
how do you find those internship opportunities?
Yeah. So, I mean, but before I tackle that question, I think what is really also important is to be decent at your job, in the sense that you at least need to put out some body of work, even if it's for a blog, right? Because because unlike engineering and all of that, it's also something that you need to, like, at least know yourself, like wanting to be a writer and becoming a writer and being a writer. These three things can be really, like, different or whatever. So I would often say that, like, if somebody wants to be a writer, and these things come early, at 17, 18, 20, 15, whatever, start writing. Just write whatever you want. If you want to be a film critic, if you want to be, like, whatever. So, I mean, before I got paid for my first writing piece, I had been writing for 7 years. I had written, like, hundreds and hundreds of film reviews and all of that, because I was like, I want to know. Vocation is one thing, profession is another, right? Like, because the reality is that no matter what you love doing, at the end of the day, it becomes a job. Like, slightly controversial thing, like, I'm not the happiest person when I wake up on a Friday morning and I have to review a Salman Khan film, which I know will be crap. And you're like, oh man, that's my Monday blues. But then I still pinch myself and I'm like, man, you're cribbing because, oh, you have to watch a movie and then write on it. Ooh. Anyway, now how do you break into it? That's complicated. I am not sure, I'll be very honest, if I have a clear-cut answer to it. But I think it's very, see, as I said, if there are no if there are no clear-cut, like, say, forums, like, say, Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, Dice, I don't know what are the latest ones, as opposed to, like, finding, like, an engineering job or an MBA job or whatever, or, like, if you don't have the cushion of, say, placements or career fairs or stuff like that, right? I mean, you have to get creative. You have to be, like, really be on the ball. I think now what has changed with social media and all of that, and that's something that even I tap into, and I will tap into if I want to write for foreign publications and all of that. Follow the people that you are interested in. Follow, like, the editors. Follow some good writers. Obviously, like their pages. Join. There are different kinds of groups on Facebook. There is one very nice group that even I have joined, media and something. I mean, so there are, like, these few groups where people post, like, job postings. There are lots of them. I mean, not lots perhaps, but, like, there's enough. It's either people looking for jobs or people wanting to hire. So that's one way. Like, you can that's one way on Facebook, at least. And I'm sure there would be more than one Facebook page out there, or one Facebook group. Definitely, like, I mean, go to all these media houses or organizations and all of that, and just be very updated about what they are doing. But because they also, like, post these job requirements on these social media websites and all of that. Twitter, I mean, just try to be very active there, because a lot of journalists there. I mean, Twitter is almost like analogous to LinkedIn for journalists. You'll get a lot of networking opportunities, and writers or editors are, you have to understand that where they are very steeped into, like, self-loathing and self-deprecating behavior and all of that. So, I mean, you would be surprised if you tweet to your favorite writer that, like, hey, what a lovely piece and all of that, and that person will be like, oh man, wow, I've delayed my whatever, just this doom plans for a day. Somebody liked it. I mean, jokes apart, but, like, be like engage with them and be very sincere about it. I think I definitely will not say try to game it or try to like whatever. I mean try to reach out to the kinds of people, to the kinds of writers you want to become, right? I mean, I'm sure if you are an early career journalist or writer, you would have at least 3 to 5 if not more like your idols and all of that. So I would say that's how you should start. And then obviously try to make your own personal connects and all of that. Somebody who's working or worked as an intern or a junior reporter or was a sub editor or whatever, reach out to them and be like, hey man, can we like catch up for a coffee or whatever, right? Like so it may sound like a bit of a work or a hassle or hustle, as opposed to somebody that like oh, you have day 0, day 1, day 2 at your college campus and you get placed and all of that. Sure, maybe there is but it's also like it's I would say it's worth it, and I don't think you'll feel it that it's a hustle and all of that, because I think if you're so invested in doing something, you'd go after it. And again, like if you join a course like say ACJ or Xavier's in Bombay and all of that, they obviously have campus placements and all of that. I mean, and they're pretty reputed schools. A lot of good media companies come. I know a few people, a few of my friends are from there. Some of them got jobs from there. So that's like one straightforward way is to also like just join a college and like graduate and just find a job and all of that, which would be relatively easy. I didn't do that, so I mean my answer is very like scatterbrained, but that also works. It has worked for me till now. I hope it continues to. So yeah.
So hearing you, one question popped into my mind. Like a lot of us think that we are also writers. Like I think that I'll write amazingly, right? But having the talent, being a writer, I think everyone thinks that they can also be a writer. But how do you recognize that you have that talent where you could actually be, write something good?
That's a phenomenal. That's an incredible question. That's okay. So it's very interesting. So so in 2013, right? Like I told you about my journey, I moved back to India and all of that. So not in 2013 May, which is exactly like almost exactly 10 years ago. I used to think I was an amazing writer. I thought that man, I just have it. Like it's, and I was so lucky. I was not. I was a terrible writer, and I'm not being like. Being either hard on myself or trying to like fish for like whatever. I can actually send you pieces back then that I wrote. They were really not good. I read and like I sometimes cringe and whatever. It's just really funny. But it's also, I was very lucky as well that I got like a few people on Facebook, on Twitter and all of that. A lot of them had not even met me, but they would just tell me that like, man, I just love your writing. It's just like, all of that, whatever. So that gave me like a lot of confidence, and also like my own male overconfidence that I was like, I'm amazing. It's only like the more that you learn, the less that you know and that makes writing very complicated. But coming to your question, that how do I know that I'm a writer? Was that something that you asked, right? That like
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I think I'm obviously saying all of this on the fly. Maybe if you ask me this question tomorrow, I may have a different answer. But I think the first really important thing is that, do you enjoy writing? Does writing give you a kick? Does it like, it's, how in movies they say, they show, right? Like in some movies, when like boy meets girl, he sees the woman or the woman sees the man, whatever, like everything dissolves and like there's just that person like bathed in like this very beatific light, right? That's how it should feel to you when you're writing. That it should, and it's that is independent of like the end product. It could be crap. That's a separate thing. But do you like, is this the only thing that even if this does not pay, if money was no object in this world, would you still do it? If nobody read you, would you still do it? If there was no fame, no money, no whatever, would you still do it? I think that's when you know that you are a writer. Writer is not somebody who is say published or who gets awards or who gets like blah 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 blah. Writer is, I think, somebody who just likes to write. I mean, that is very important. I can give you a very small example. March I think Feb or March 2013, I thought that I'd gone to India in December 2012, and I thought that I wouldn't come to India to become a writer and all of that, because I was this typical NRI or whatever, too much pollution, too much whatever XYZ, and I was like, F all of that. I will just study for GMAT, and all of this was a big mistake. I am just going to study crack GMAT, go to some Harvard, Yale, Stanford, whatever, and be just like a Wall Street guy, and I'll just make money. That's what my plan was. So I come back. I had a roommate who also had similar plans and all of that. So we studied for GMAT for some 2.5 months. We were we really did all the hard work, solved all the sample papers, time papers, all of that. And I remember after 2.5 months, and I told myself that I'll not watch any film, I will not write anything, I'll not do anything, right? And I told myself that this is it. This was all it was just one of those fancy dreams that I had, and all of this is bullshit. It's following your passion and all that. It doesn't make sense. So I had not seen a movie for 2.5 months. That for me was just that's 25 years for me. So I told my friend, and I used to live in this small town called Fort Collins in Colorado. So I told my friend that man, we have studied a lot for 2.5 months, and this self-imposed break of mine. But there's this movie that has come out, so we should take a break. Whatever, we'll start applying in a bit, preparing doing the final run before we write the GMAT. So a movie has come out. It's called Kai Poche in Denver. Let's just go watch it, and whatever. And I was like, that would be it. So I go there. I watched Kai Poche. I kind of liked it, and I came back. It was late in the night, and the next morning I woke up and I just couldn't help myself writing a piece on it. And and I told myself that dude, you'll just stop at 500 words. Just remember the promise that you made to yourself. This is and when I started to write, I figured out that I wasn't writing, but to be dramatic about it, I was flowing. I just couldn't stop myself, and that was where I realized I wanted to be a writer. There is this, again, to be very filmy about it, there is this one scene in Rockstar, right? Where Jordan, played by Ranbir Kapoor, he shows up at Nargis Fakhri's place and all of that, right? And her mother comes out, and she tells him that, Jordan, this is not the right time, tum jao, go. And then he tells her that agar main jana chahun bhi, to main nahi ja paunga. That's what it should feel like when you write. I know it just is a very, very loaded, very idealistic, perhaps a naive answer, I know, but that's how it's always spoken to me. So that's how I knew that you are a writer.
Hearing you, I know that I cannot be a writer. So
No.
It's good.
I'll just say that was something that worked for me, and it's absolutely. It's not
I recognize that I don't have that kind of passion for writing, right? So
no, I mean, not everybody needs to have that kind of passion about writing. That's also true, but that just came from me. That that's how I like to think, or like to view at things. But also, I mean, obviously there are different ways. Also, how can one know and all of that? And there is no harm in also looking at it as a job that one likes but is not really passionate about. But I think, I mean, to dial it down a bit to make it less filmy and more palatable, would be that, I mean, it's just something that, I mean, you do need to enjoy some component of it, definitely, right? Because if there are people in our country which is still wrapped by income inequality, and a lot of we are not a rich country, we are not whatever, money is a big component. So I mean, I can completely imagine, unless you're not very privileged, unless you don't come from say your father or mother is a big journalist or an editor or whatever, that you're sacrificing these XYZ careers. I can only think of engineering, medicine, doctor, MBA, lawyer, stuff like that, very conventional ones. So you're obviously making a compromise. So then, if you're making a compromise, what are you making a compromise on, right? So there has to be a large component of joy. It may not be as filmy as mine, of course, but yeah, I mean, if you think that you are reasonably happy doing writing, and I think what is very important is, do you want to improve at it?
Yeah.
I think that is, for me, I think if somebody asked me that how I was an engineer, I would say, I was fine. I was not an idiot. I was pretty okay. But did I actually want to be a better engineer, a stellar engineer, an excellent engineer, or whatever? I don't think I cared that much. So obviously, you need to care. You need to love it for sure. I think these are, if not the entirety of it, at least some part of it. So yeah, I think that would be one way to look at it.
Thank you so much for sharing your amazing perspective. Like, I've gained so much insight into journalism, into writing right now. So thank you so much. And I'm sure your story and your invaluable insights will help those who are actually thinking about getting into this field. They'll also analyze their skills, maybe start writing blogs out there like you did. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this. I mean, there were just so many things. I mean, excellent questions, of course, and there were just so many things that are always sort of like buried, like in the cellar of my brain, perhaps even heart. I had not even processed, because when when you're in a story, you don't know you are in a story, right? Like you are just like doing things. But there are lots of, as Steve Jobs said, right? Like that you can only connect dots looking backwards and stuff like that. So some dots did like align for me in this chat through your questions. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.